My wife was cheating on me. I found out through her messages, but I got revenge by tricking her into signing divorce papers and selling her house without her knowledge. The Scouts' motto, always ready, highlighted attributes such as integrity, loyalty, helpfulness, amiability, politeness, kindness, obedience, cheerfulness, thriftiness, courage, cleanliness, and reverence. However, I had always believed their principles seemed to involve gullibility, foolishness, and an excessive amount of trust. With no other choices available, I turned to snooping on Laura's smartphone, which I seldom did. She knew this and had added extra security measures. As a former scout, honesty and respect for privacy were ingrained in me, but with Laura's forthcoming trip, I couldn't remember the name of her hotel and wanted to avoid another argument about my forgetfulness, a recurring issue recently. Our upcoming separation, the longest since we married 6 years ago, made me consider romantic gestures like sending flowers. Yet, the irony of Rome, the city of love, wasn't lost on me. I wouldn't be the one sharing those romantic moments with her. James, her travel companion, would. Desperation led me to use our anniversary date as her smartphone passcode, uncovering a series of messages between Laura and James detailing their romantic plans in Rome. What shocked me as much as the affair was their use of work emails. Both Laura and James were legal professionals and should have known better. Laura was an attorney, and James worked as a paralegal at her firm. Their careers involved handling sensitive documents and uncovering affairs through emails, making their actions even more reckless. I hadn't paid much attention to Laura's trip details or the hotel's name because of a nagging suspicion. My legal background had sharpened my intuition, and something felt off when Laura first mentioned the trip. She described it as a routine arbitration case with no time for sightseeing, avoiding my eyes as she spoke. Her casual demeanor didn't align with our long-held dream of visiting Rome together. I found her response odd, catching me off guard with a worst-case scenario I hadn't anticipated. One email subject line struck me deeply. "Why don't you just lose the Scout so we can spend more time together and not worry?" James's recent message was met with Laura's unsettling reply. "I feel secure with him." Overwhelmed with a mix of betrayal and anger, I typed out a response with a smiley face emoji masking my turmoil. Unsure of my next move, I decided to print the email using the Wi-Fi printer in the basement, a precautionary measure driven by my legal instincts. Preserving evidence was crucial, so I stashed the printed email in my computer bag. Taking a moment to think, I devised a plan. Seeing it as a win-win situation, I considered pretending to make a romantic gesture toward Laura, only to abruptly confront her with the truth. Conversely, James wouldn't show any mercy in a similar scenario. I knew I needed to act strategically. My intellect, not physical prowess, was my strength as a lawyer. Time was of the essence, with Laura due to return from her run soon. I had tasks to complete, including finishing an assignment and securing a hotel booking. I wasn't sure why I needed the hotel information, but felt it was essential. I located a hotel near the Colosseum, close to the International Chamber of Commerce, where Laura and James would be handling their arbitration case during their anticipated breaks from their hotel tryst. I hurriedly researched Ohio's divorce laws, recalling from my bar exam that infidelity could be grounds for divorce, impacting alimony and property division. However, there were defenses against infidelity charges, such as reconciliation. I needed to vacate the house quickly, avoiding confrontation for now. My goal was to shock Laura into disbelief, employing a strategy akin to shock and awe to end the marriage. Lies would be necessary despite conflicting with Scout law. This was war, and as Winston Churchill famously said, "In war, truth is so precious that it must be accompanied by a bodyguard of lies." I justified my deceit as serving a greater purpose, now unbound by oath. Returning to the bedroom, I quickly packed my belongings, placing the suitcases by the front door. I gathered essential documents, bank statements, credit card statements, retirement accounts, car paperwork, pay stubs, mortgage statements, and Laura's latest student loan balance. Hearing her in the kitchen after her run, I put on a concerned expression as I ascended from my basement office. Seeing her drinking sports drink with her black hair tied back, I couldn't deny her attractiveness, though her actions disgusted me. I realized love was no longer alive. I conveyed my plans to go to Rome with a somber smile. Laura's reaction was immediate. Her face paled, and her green eyes lost their usual sparkle. She questioned me about the destination, her initial shock quickly fading. I explained that Ryan had called, needing me to prepare a witness for an insurance case. I mentioned the judge's frustration over a lost motion to compel, which had disrupted the court schedule. I anticipated being on the road for a few weeks, but hinted at the possibility of stopping by occasionally for laundry. Laura expressed sympathy, suggesting that perhaps my firm was hiring. I expressed a desire to join her in Rome, noticing a flicker of worry on her face before she teased me about sending my resume, despite Loras Law School having a higher ranking than mine. She moved as if to hug me, but I sidestepped her and headed downstairs to my office, battling visions of punching her and struggling to maintain control. As Laura asked about dinner plans, I explained I couldn't stay and would grab something on the road, as Ryan was eager for me to leave immediately. Laura followed me to the door looking slightly concerned as I picked up my suitcases and left. She declined a goodbye kiss, citing a sore throat and the possibility of a cold or allergies, expressing concern about me catching anything from her. I told Laura I wouldn't be back until Friday at the earliest, mentioning some stops in Akron and Cincinnati. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was already thinking about the unexpected freedom my absence would offer. After waving goodbye, I drove off, hoping she would think I was stressed about work and irritated about being called in on a Saturday. My acting skills are limited, but I had a hunch she was already planning to reach out to James. I drove until I found a shopping center with a coffee shop. Like many lawyers, I found clarity with pen and paper. As I sipped my coffee, I started listing cases and realized that reconciliation had never even crossed my mind. Retribution was the only path forward, and the question was how far I should go. My thoughts were interrupted by my phone ringing. The call was from an unfamiliar number. Impatiently, I answered, and a man named Michael Stevens introduced himself. He was in the business of buying old houses to replace them with mansions. Despite acknowledging that people generally disapproved of his work, he emphasized the allure of receiving a substantial check. I was initially taken aback by the idea of tearing down our cozy home, but soon regained my composure. Stevens proposed buying our house for demolition, citing the uncertainty of new construction timelines and offering a potentially lucrative deal if we were willing to sell. I couldn't help but smirk at the prospect, remembering how Laura had chosen the house shortly before our wedding. It was a charming ranch in a serene setting, with a lovely yard overlooking woods and a creek. The treehouse visible from the bedroom window symbolized our envisioned family life. The location was convenient, with easy access to major highways and a manageable commute to work. I told Stevens about my busy schedule in the coming days and arranged to meet on Sunday morning. Stevens assured me that he had already assessed the property from the outside and didn't need to see the interior. Reflecting on the Scouts' ideals, rooted in military scouting and emphasizing skills like stealth and self-reliance, I realized Laura had unknowingly walked into a trap reminiscent of a military ambush. Before taking further action, I decided to do some reconnaissance. With my plan in mind, I deliberately knocked over my empty coffee cup and stepped out to my car for privacy. I dialed a number on my cell phone and waited for a response. Eventually, I connected with Chris Brown, a former private investigator I had worked with during my time as a corporate lawyer. Chris had often assisted with pro bono legal cases, reflecting my commitment to public service. I recounted the urgent favor I needed, explaining the situation involving my wife and another man. Chris expressed disbelief at Laura's audacity and offered to handle the matter himself as a token of gratitude for my past assistance in a high-profile divorce case. I thanked Chris and provided details about the house and the backyard, mentioning its direct access to the bedroom where Laura practiced yoga with the curtains open. I suggested that Chris could use it for surveillance purposes, accessible by traversing the woods and leaping over the creek after dark. I also mentioned my plan to set up a camera outside, aimed at the front of the house to monitor activities. After finalizing arrangements with Chris, I contacted Alex, a lawyer I intended to hire for my divorce proceedings. Despite Alex's initial confusion about the purpose of my call, I clarified that I needed legal representation due to my wife's infidelity. After I briefed him on the situation, Alex suggested meeting the next day to start working on the case. He acknowledged the need to gather clear evidence of infidelity and navigate the complexities of the financial settlement, given Laura's resources and support from her colleagues. I assured Alex that I would handle the situation, expressing confidence in resolving it amicably. My next call was to discuss potential retaliation. I told him I wasn't planning to retaliate, opting for a wait-and-see approach. For my final call, I reached out to Emily, choosing my words carefully. After a moment of silence, Emily was pleased to hear from me after so long. I explained Laura's recent behavior, and Emily revealed that Laura's actions had driven a wedge between them, but she was willing to help me as a friend. I then shared my plan with her. After a brief pause, Emily laughed, amused by the situation. She agreed to help me, acknowledging my ability to make her laugh. I thanked Emily, promising to treat her and her partner to dinner once things settled down. Emily accepted the invitation, confirming it as a date. Needing some privacy to strategize, I found lodging at an extended-stay hotel outside Cleveland's Beltway, far from our usual spots. Once settled, I ventured out for some food. Although I wasn't hungry, I knew I needed to eat to balance the drinks I planned to have. The nearby restaurant would do, despite the complimentary chips and cheese likely causing some discomfort. Seated in a booth, I noticed the bartender's gaze but dismissed it, too preoccupied with my thoughts. The pupusas on the menu hinted at the restaurant's Central American influence masquerading as Mexican. Unfazed, I ordered tequila, bracing myself for a brutal hangover the next day. Part of the ordeal was facing the waitress, who returned with top-shelf tequila and a glass. She gestured toward the bartender, who acknowledged me by pouring himself a generous serving. I recognized him from Garcia's legal proceedings, always sitting alone in the back, quietly taking notes and drinking tequila. After clearing my plate, I wandered to the break room, feeling like the surroundings were swaying like a ship. When I returned to my booth, the bartender had taken a seat opposite me. He greeted me warmly and thanked me for helping his cousin escape an abusive marriage. I tried to downplay my involvement, but he continued, mentioning that the abusive husband had been severely injured in jail, potentially facing permanent damage. A chill ran down my spine as he relayed this information with a slight smile. I admitted I hadn't been aware of the extent of the injuries. The bartender nonchalantly remarked that it was old news. Curious about why I was alone on a Saturday night, he inquired about my wife. I realized he must have seen Laura and me at a hearing once, followed by a kiss. I decided to be honest about the marital issues, including Laura's potential infidelity. The bartender responded with a knowing smile, suggesting that while he wasn't a lawyer, he understood the importance of keeping secrets. He hinted at my exposed notebook containing incriminating details and a to-do list. I shrugged off the security lapse, noting that at least no client secrets had been compromised. He then asked what I truly desired aside from money, suggesting the possibility of revenge. I confessed I wanted to physically harm Laura, to break her nose and blacken her eyes. The bartender cautioned me against violent retaliation, reminding me of the potential consequences like jail time. I nodded in agreement, acknowledging my past assistance to his cousin. The bartender insisted on repaying the debt. I tried to interject, mentioning Chris' role in gathering evidence and the police's involvement in the case. I also enlisted a partner from my firm to ensure proper handling of the criminal proceedings and respectful treatment by prosecutors. Despite my objections, the bartender commended my efforts in assisting those in need and offered his help in return. When I expressed uncertainty about his identity, he revealed himself as Carlos Ramirez, also known as El Lobo to some. I jokingly asked if I had to sell my soul for a favor, to which El Lobo responded with a chuckle, stating it was merely professional courtesy. He then instructed me to provide my address, Laura's name, and her daily routine. He suggested I get a cell phone for easier communication and leave a contact number at the bar. El Lobo advised me not to return to the bar, claiming it was for the best. I briefed Chris about hiring a private investigator, my intention to stay home until Laura's departure for Italy, and her travel plans. Chris knew the location of the Rome hotel, but kept the method of obtaining the information vague. "Just one question, Signor," he queried with a serious expression. "Is there any chance of reconciliation, forgiveness, or mercy? I don't want doubts later." I met his gaze, took a deep breath, and reflected on my emotions. The path ahead was clear. Trust and loyalty were fundamental to me, but they were lacking in my marriage. Laura's actions had turned love into hate. While I might eventually become indifferent, that time had not yet arrived. "No," I affirmed. El Lobo visibly relaxed. "Okay, don't fret," he said. When the waitress presented the bill, El Lobo dismissed her but allowed me to tip generously. He also permitted me to take a bottle of tequila, advising me to use it carefully. I woke up Sunday morning without much of a hangover and arrived at Alex's law office at 10 to find Chris already there. Chris conveyed his findings, informing me that Laura was indeed with another man in our bed. He handed me a DVD containing evidence of their infidelity, cautioning me against watching it. Alex expressed concern about my decisions, but I requested a summary of the evidence. Chris recounted how he had observed Laura and James Martin engaging in sexual activity in the treehouse, just as I had suggested. They had identified James Martin as Laura's partner and planned to draft a report in affidavit form for Alex to file. Regretting the situation, I decided to file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, but requested that Laura not be served immediately. I instructed Alex to file the paperwork on Monday afternoon before the office closed. Alex reminded me of his limitations in criminal law, cautioning that he wouldn't be able to help if I got into legal trouble. "You'd be pleasantly surprised," I mentioned as I exited. My next destination was a meeting with Michael Stevens. It turned out to be an exceptionally productive session, where I discovered we could sell the house for over $200,000 more than the mortgage without any commission to the real estate agent. Laura would be thrilled. I assured Michael that I'd have all the necessary paperwork ready to close the deal promptly. After leaving Michael's office, I checked my phone. No messages, no calls. She must still be occupied with James. I seized the opportunity to call my boss, Ryan, urgently requesting 2 weeks of vacation or I'd resign. Ryan, realizing my pivotal role in the ongoing case, hastily agreed. Luckily, there was a lull in Ryan's workload, allowing me some leeway. With the groundwork laid, I returned to the hotel to dive into the real work. By Monday evening, I was fully prepared. Throughout Sunday night and Monday, Laura left me several voicemails that I ignored. I was conserving all my energy for Tuesday morning. Thanks to Chris' strategically placed camera outside the house, I knew James had spent Monday night there. I estimated that James would leave for work around 8 a.m. and Laura around 8:30 a.m., so I planned my move for 7 a.m. I entered through the front door, cheerfully announcing, "Honey, I'm home." I heard sharp footsteps upstairs, and then Laura came down in her robe, looking disheveled and shocked. She greeted me, trying to sound cheerful, but her exhaustion and panic were evident. I apologized for the unexpected return, blaming it on the unpredictable nature of business trips. Ignoring the wine glasses in the living room, I headed straight to the dining room and began arranging papers on the table. Meanwhile, Laura hesitated, likely fearing I'd discover James still upstairs. When there was a knock at the door, I asked her to handle it. To her surprise, it was Emily who entered, greeting us warmly. Laura watched as Emily joined me at the dining table and opened her briefcase. I explained that I had arranged for financial and medical preparations for Laura's upcoming overseas trip due to my busy schedule. I also mentioned securing a refinancing offer for our mortgage, apologizing for the short notice. Laura relaxed a bit upon realizing that Emily was a notary. She joked about me being her scout, but her cautious demeanor remained. I handed her a pen, pointing out where to sign on the documents and encouraging her to take her time reading them. Expressing her trust in me, Laura swiftly signed all the documents. I hoped her trust was genuine as I handed each paper to Emily for notarization. Laura offered us coffee, but both Emily and I declined. Emily documented the notarized papers while I sorted them into folders. Laura glanced up, anticipating my next move and planning hers. Once Emily left, discreetly stowing her tools, Emily smiled at me when Laura wasn't looking. I gave Laura a reprieve, citing a need for a teleconference, and retreated to my basement office. Her shoulders visibly relaxed, thinking she had time to usher James out and erase any trace of his presence before I re-emerged. I pretended not to hear James's footsteps or the garage door opening as he left. But when I heard the shower running in the master bath, I gathered my belongings, exited through the basement door, and drove away without a word to my unsuspecting wife. 2 hours later, after a hearty breakfast at the diner, I found myself in Alex's office. Alex looked shocked when I told him Laura had signed the necessary forms, consenting to the divorce petition and waiving service of court notices. He confirmed the forms were properly notarized. I also stated that Laura had agreed to a property division agreement, granting me all proceeds from the house sale, her cars and jewelry, leaving me full discretion over her belongings. Both parties would retain their respective retirement accounts and she would receive no alimony from me. When questioned about her financial situation, I responded that she earns more than I do anyway. Alex reviewed the documents, noting that Laura had agreed to exit the marriage with minimal assets and significant debt. I confirmed the accuracy of the information, attributing it to her generosity. Alex scrutinized me briefly before returning his attention to the papers. I also confirmed that Laura had signed an affidavit admitting to infidelity, acknowledging her lover's presence in the marital bedroom at the time of signing, and affirming the authenticity of email correspondence discussing their affair. Alex initially appeared surprised, but eventually smiled, recognizing my respected reputation and our friendship from law school. He decided to proceed with filing the documents, admitting that everything appeared legitimate and expressing disbelief at my actions. Feeling a mix of satisfaction and unease, I expressed immense embarrassment to the judge, acknowledging that I had been consumed by my client's breach of trust. The judge discussed whether the notary could confirm Laura's signature on the documents and if Laura had scrutinized them. I confidently affirmed that Laura, with her experience as a seasoned litigator, had thoroughly assessed the documents. Alex indicated that he would file all the necessary documents that day, including Chris' affidavit and report, along with photos and a DVD. He mentioned his intention to keep the DVD out of the electronic file for the time being to avoid making headlines. I agreed, emphasizing the importance of keeping things quiet, especially with Laura's impending departure for Rome in just over 2 weeks. Alex asked if I knew anyone at the county courthouse, mentioning Daniel, a classmate from the following year who is now clerking there to boost his resume. Alex suggested that Daniel might expedite the legal process, but cautioned that if the judge demanded live testimony, the case could collapse. He noted that Laura would need to decide whether to contest fraud on the court once she understood the situation. Alex mentioned that if things soured, he might have to part ways with my representation. I acknowledged Alex's points and agreed to discuss the matter further, but not at that moment. Chris couldn't determine if they met elsewhere during the week or at the office, but it wasn't at home. He promised to update me if anything changed. I made some discreet moves while Laura was away, returning to the house to collect necessary financial documents and signing a contract to sell the house to Michael Stevens, with the closing scheduled for Laura's first week in Italy. During this period, I threw myself into self-care, hitting the gym, indulging in leisurely reading, and reflecting on my life as I neared 30. Chris updated me on Saturday that Laura was back with James at the house. I thanked him, feeling indifferent. Once the house was sold, I'd rather burn the sheets than keep them. By then, I had watched the video Chris had given me. James, a few years younger, was a gym fanatic, constantly admiring himself in the mirror post-workout. Apart from his chiseled physique, he was unremarkable. I was fit, but didn't have the sculpted body Laura seemed to crave. I had no interest in such superficiality. Soon enough, Laura left for Rome. A private investigator tracked her to the airport, confirming her departure. With her gone, I cleared out her belongings, packed what I wanted, and had movers transport everything to storage. Thanks to Michael Stevens' selling skills, I quickly sold the furniture. When the house was finally empty, I did one last sweep before my final task. I gathered the wedding photos, the album, and Laura's gown, carrying them to the patio fire pit beneath the treehouse. I arranged the photos and album on the embers, doused the dress with lighter fluid, and struck a match. Watching everything burn, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction as each photo disintegrated in the flames. The next day, I finalized the sale of our home, using Laura's power of attorney to sign on her behalf. I deposited the proceeds from the house sale into my personal account and closed our joint accounts. A few days later, during Laura's first week in Italy, a construction crew demolished the house. They cleared the rubble and started preparing the site for a new build. Unfortunately, the tree supporting the treehouse had to be removed to make way for a planned gazebo. However, construction halted due to a permit issue, leaving only a bare plot. A friend from law school working in the county permit office and I were optimistic the matter would be resolved before Laura returned from Italy, pending proper form approvals. During this time, I avoided all communication attempts from Laura, offering vague responses to inquiries. El Lobo informed me of Laura and James' apparent stress, hinting that Laura might suspect something was wrong. When asked about Laura's rings, I declined, and El Lobo suggested another potential recipient. I agreed without hesitation. 2 days before Laura's expected return, I received the divorce decree unexpectedly swiftly from Aleka's office. As I was leaving, El Lobo called, advising me to take a public vacation. Following his advice, I headed to New York, reconnecting with college friends and enjoying various activities, mostly funded by credit cards. I ensured the hotel staff recognized me through generous tipping. While there, I mailed a DVD to Laura's parents' house, showing me burning her wedding dress and album. Late one Sunday night, after enjoying coffee and cake in Little Italy, Manhattan, my phone rang. It was my father-in-law, David. "Where are you?" "Laura's in the hospital. She's losing it." "What happened?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "She came back from a business trip on Friday, but she and a colleague were kidnapped at the airport. They only escaped this morning. Her colleague was nearly beaten to death, and Laura—" His voice trembled. "What happened to Laura?" I pressed. "When she woke up, she was covered in tattoos, horrible things, calling her a strumpet and a loose woman. Then some masked guy came in, punched her, breaking her nose, and gave her 2 black eyes." I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. It was the perfect twist of fate. I would have been content if Laura had just realized I had betrayed her in court as she had betrayed me in marriage. But this was a delightful surprise. It would be worth an immortal soul if I could give it away. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, informing him that I was out of town and asking what I should do about Laura's situation. He expressed surprise, reminding me that Laura was my wife. I then revealed that we were divorced as of last week and accused Laura of cheating on me with the man she was traveling with. Despite the cruelty in my tone, I offered to send him a copy of the video as evidence. There was silence, and I speculated if he was in shock. Eventually, he declared they were done with Laura, saying I would have to take care of her. After some shouting, he hung up, leaving me to ponder our strained relationship. City life had become too stressful. I sent Ryan an email telling him and the firm to go to hell, respectfully. I got myself new hiking and camping gear. Laura never liked camping, so this was my chance to reconnect with my scouting past. The hotel was accommodating, agreeing to hold my luggage for a while for a reasonable fee. Soon, I was on my way to the Adirondack Mountains to commune with nature until things calmed down. Luckily, I had my passport with me in case I had time to travel to Canada, which I did. For most of the next 8 weeks, I turned my phone off. At first, I thought some crazy woman had stolen my ex-wife's phone because there were dozens, if not hundreds, of messages filled with frantic screaming and crying. I only listened to 1 or 2 before deleting the rest. There were also lots of crazy emails. When I first saw her account, I thought it had to be hacked. Who could have the patience to read through all that? I just hoped that this crazy woman would get the help she clearly needed. Fast forward 8 weeks, and I was having drinks with Chris and Alex. Alex dropped a bombshell, saying he had cut ties with our attorney after sending me the divorce papers through registered mail. I had to confess, I hadn't even checked my mail yet. Alex saw it as a serious issue, and Chris called it a complete disaster. Alex suggested that Chris and I start tackling the issue on Monday morning. Mrs. Johnson and her parents had gone to the old homestead. They didn't remove the security camera in time. When she saw the empty lot, she lost it, collapsing to her knees, sobbing and curling into a fetal position. Her tantrum escalated, kicking and screaming like a child throwing a fit at a mall. When the equipment crew showed up, she blew up again. The third meltdown happened when the construction workers saw the tattoos on her face and burst out laughing. The tattoos were clear as day on camera, with phrases like strumpet and I love face standing out despite her raccoon eyes and duct-taped broken nose. Alex then told me about the day Laura and a couple of high-powered lawyers barged into his office without an appointment. He made them wait for 15 minutes, making sure his Glock was loaded in the desk, taking advantage of Ohio's laws. When their wait was over, they started bombarding him with talk of emergency motions, bar complaints, and contempt proceedings. Alex couldn't help but notice the ink all over Laura's face, written in red and blue. Once he refocused, he asked what the issue was and which statement in the documents was false. They all went silent, looking at each other. Then he asked if there was a dispute over my ex-infidelity, and they all said yes. He played a videotape he had prepared, showing Laura clearly having an affair in our bed. It was obvious they hadn't gone through all the case files, as they looked utterly confused. Alex recounted that Laura started screaming that I didn't give her a chance to explain. He told her that I didn't care about her reasons as long as it was over. Eventually, she calmed down and claimed she never agreed to let me sell the house, and that I had burned her wedding dress, pictures, and album, which she said were her personal property. Alex showed her the powers of attorney, one specifically for selling the house, and the property settlement agreement, which allowed me to dispose of her personal items. He told her she was lucky to still have her clothes. He asked if she denied her signature on the documents. She admitted she didn't, but claimed she never agreed to the terms. Alex then questioned if her defense was that she didn't read what she signed, and asked her to imagine how cross-examination would go in court. She went silent. He pointed to an affidavit she signed, admitting her lover was upstairs when she signed, and asked if that was true. She fainted. Despite his efforts to revive her, he had to call emergency services. She refused to go to the hospital, yelling about tattoos and her boyfriend being attacked. Alex reassured her that as far as he knew, I had nothing to do with it and that I was out of town. He mentioned that James might have angered someone else's husband by sleeping with her, or another woman who thought Laura was attacking James. He informed me that he had told them they could discuss any criminal case with the Cleveland police and expressed regret for missing the confrontation. Alex said things were getting better and that they were discussing filing a motion for reconsideration when he got an anonymous email with links to videos of Laura and James in my bed, fooling around in front of the Coliseum. The email threatened to send the tapes to everyone Laura knew, claiming I was unaware and unable to stop it. They claimed to be friends I had helped, offering protection but threatening to expose the tapes unless Laura backed off. I told Alex I knew nothing about this. Alex said after that revelation, they left without further contact, and nothing happened at the courthouse. He then recounted Chris' encounter with the police, saying detectives approached them for copies of the tape and the report, but lost interest. Neither Laura nor James could remember what happened, just that they took a cab from the airport, and James ended up hospitalized. Laura woke up in a hotel, got assaulted, and ended up in the hospital. The room expenses were charged to her credit card, including room service and mini bar charges. I mentioned that the New York police and my friends had been contacted, all of whom confirmed my busy schedule in the city. Alex added that my ex was getting laser tattoo removal in her parents' basement, which was expensive due to the extensive coverage. I commented on this, earning a glance from Alex and stifled laughter from Chris. Alex then brought up the mediator situation, saying he was badly injured and needed extensive therapy for multiple concussions. Finding another job might be tough since their firm also let them go. Alex explained that their relationship had soured during the trip, affecting the arbitration negatively. Mistakes were made, exhibits weren't ready, and witness notes were lost, leaving the client unhappy. Sacrifices were made to retain future work. Chris suggested that someday I should enlighten them about something, to which I jokingly said I was a scout. Chris continued, mentioning Emily had waited in the car and expressing a bit of envy about my situation. We agreed to discuss further over dinner, and I offered to treat them for helping with my liberation. As I drove away, Emily surprised me by saying she didn't have a boyfriend. I suggested we head home, with a stop at the post office first. When she asked why, I explained I was checking on a friend's safety, showing her a card from the glove compartment with a scout emblem.